Welcome to 19 O'Clock News, a Kodocha podcast. My name is Mahou Shoujo M. I am here with my co-host, That Kodocha Girl, to discuss a very exciting topic with a very exciting guest.
Yes, so I am also very excited today. So we have a special guest today here named Matteo. And we are going to talk about the Italian version of Kodocha known as Rossana.
Yes, it's a really special topic for me. I will talk about it, my experience, and some various themes about it, because I'm really passionate about it, and a lot of people in the server know it, for example.
I actually know, my knowledge is very limited to when it comes to the Italian version of Kodocha. So actually, it's thanks to Matteo that I do know a little bit about it. Honestly, Matteo was a big part of the early success of my YouTube channel. So I want to give you a big thank you because you really helped me grow as a YouTuber.
I appreciate that because one of my main passions is searching into the past. And yeah, I really liked it being a part of this great project. The old night of Kodocha, and in fact I'm still going on about it with searching even more all the websites and so on.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and like you got me into it, like researching other topics that I'm into, which is why I started my second channel, which is a deep dive into like different little topics I find interesting into the Internet Archive and the Wayback Machine. And you can find some really interesting things about Kodocha and Rossana on the Wayback Machine. I found a lot of merchandise that we don't see coming up on the surface web on the Wayback Machine.
Yeah, one of the best things about those websites is probably that you can find an old era, a different era, really different compared to nowadays. For example, people being more free on the internet, of exposing what they like, a lot of more freedom in graphics, and so on and so on. And it's probably what made me fall in love with the old internet, even if I'm only an 18-year-old boy. That, nowadays, this generation doesn't really care about the old internet. And one of the things I like doing the most is searching into the past, because honestly, someday a server may die, a server may be deactivated. We can lose all of this. Like, for example, a recent case is MySpace. It was really bad. It was really bad, and I was really sad because that is a simple example, but a lot of songs, audio projects that got lost is not good for the future. There, a lot of artists were born, and losing a part of history of internet, but also of the music, is something that is not good for me and for a lot of other people that like talking about music, And the same thing goes for the old web design. Nowadays, I think that the majority of websites are quite boring. They lack in graphics and so on and so on. That's
I think you're right. I was around for a lot of the old internet, and I had and ran some fan sites well back in the day. Nothing crazy, of course, because to run a real fan website, you needed money, which I did not have because I was very young. But I did run a Tokyo Mew Mew fan site that was like hosted on, I don't even remember. I think it was an MSN domain. And then, of course, like Angel Fire was one that everybody used to make their fan sites. And you're right, it was a different time. You don't really see people pulling things together for series the way that they used to. It was a different time for sure.
Yeah, also for social medias in general. Nowadays, the older ones are dead, but now luckily there is someone that tries to make them popular again. One example is ICQ, who is, I think that everyone knows it because it was probably the first real popular social media on the internet, and it was much more before MSN, Yahoo, Messenger, and the other ones I know. And it was quite a revolution from the time. But unfortunately, now we lost a lot because it's really simple. The application is now really WhatsApp-like application on the Google Play Store and nothing else. It's very simple. But the real ICQ was much more. And one of the things I managed to do during the last months is creating with an interesting server setting. I managed to make ICQ work with also creating a new profile. So it's it's really interesting, but ICQ is still working in a way. There aren't a lot of people. I try to be really active, but we don't have many people talking on it. So it's a bit sad, but it's better than nothing. Better than losing a part of internet history. And that's it.
That's really cool that you did that.
Em, do you want to start us off with the first question that we have for Matteo?
Sure. Very exciting. So, Matteo, when did you first watch Rossana and how has it impacted you?
Well, my first time with that beautiful anime, Rossana, was back in the 29 when I was only 4 years old. I can't remember exactly the channel I watched it on, but I think it was a Mediaset one like Italia Uno, those ones. And yeah, the first time I watched it, I wasn't really impressed because, when you are a kid, you don't really notice it the first time. But then, I don't know why, probably the character design, and the general aura of the anime really attracted me. And yeah, the first impact wasn't 100%, I would say, positive, but then after some years, I found it again, and I remembered the characters. So the first positive thing of it is that they made characters that you can recognize. The first time was much more of seeing the characters, not much what was the anime about. Also because I didn't watch all the episodes. It was already started. It had already started. It was I can't remember the episode, but it wasn't the first one.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Okay, so you were attracted originally to the character designs. And what has kept you, I guess, coming back to the series all these years later?
Well, the second time I watched it was in 2013. I remember it was March when it was Easter summer school break, and I was at my grandma's house, and of course, as a small boy, I was watching TV, watching cartoons and animes on the TV, and on a channel called Boing, it was it is a channel that still exists now. Well, I found Rossana. I was surprised because remembering all the characters, okay, all right, or not everyone, but the main ones, yes, like Sana and Akito. But yeah, I was really excited and really surprised of seeing it again. But the main problem was that they were airing not the first season, but only the episodes from 52 onwards. Yeah, I still don't know why, even 10 years after, but I was still happy to see it again because because I really loved it then, and maybe it was the first time that my passion for Rossana started watching that second time.
That's really beautiful. I love that you kind of came back to it and fell in love with it.
I am
Enjoying
too,
our guest.
honestly.
Yeah.
Because again, I don't know much about Rosanna, so it's just like, ooh, fascinating.
Uh,
So,
well, it's so
uh,
interesting too to hear about the concept of reruns, I guess, for Rossana, just because, and I wonder if in Japan, they run reruns of Kodocha ever, but over here, I mean, its televised release was so short anyway, rest in peace to the Funimation channel, that it's interesting to hear about, like, just like as a concept, like, wow, you could just turn on TV and it was playing somewhere else is wild to me.
yeah, same here. Like to think that it was so popular that it was like on the level with like the Pokemon anime in Italy. At least that's the impression that I get from the fans from Italy, that it was basically a very popular cartoon that would play like alongside those more popular ones that are, I guess, more universally known.
Well, yeah, Pokemon is well, we've been airing it for a lot of years, and what a funny coincidence, almost from the same years of Rossana. So we are talking about the early 20s, the new millennium I'm talking about. So yeah, in the last years we're not airing it also because Mediaset lost the TV directs for it. So they can't air it. The same goes for some other series of the past, like Card Captor Sakura. I'm talking about, of course, the first season, not Clear Card. It is also available on Sky, the Sky Pay TV, and on Mediaset now, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, it's a question of buying the program itself and airing it then. For example, Roxana now, I think that it's still under contract with Mediaset because they still air it sometimes. The last time was back in May 2022.
Oh wow.
Probably the worst, with the worst timetable ever, probably because they aired it on 4 a.m. in the morning. That's all. It's comical, but yeah, I'm not joking. It's really like this.
That's so funny.
It
What
is interesting though too, because in the United States, there's not a lot of channels that were airing anime, but and particularly animes with more adult themes. But the ones that were, like you could watch on Adult Swim, which was the sort of late night timetable, and so you would watch Inuyasha at 2 or 3 in the morning. So it's really interesting.
Well, yeah, it's yeah, if you have to talk about history of animes here in Italy, well, the story would be really long. The only thing I can say about nowadays is that we don't have many channels that air animes. Mostly regional ones that you can find, for example, by moving the antenna, trying to set it on the or only on some regional channels.
so how did Rosanna become so popular in Italy?
Well, we have to remember that Rossana in Italy has been here since the 8th of July of the year 2000. So it's 23 years, but it's still popular nowadays. I think there are some questions about it. It's so popular nowadays. The first thing is that probably we didn't have much to do in those years, or better, the kids, boys and girls in those years after school liked to watch Italia Uno and those channels to watch animes. So it was the main thing to do. I read a lot of anecdotes, and on the web, in the internet, there are still forums with messages back to the year 2000, and so it's a great experience to see how the persons have seen it in first person, and the best thing is probably the first comment because you have to think that it was the first time it was aired. So it was the first opinion. But anyway, one of the things that probably made it become so popular was that on the Mediaset channels, the animes were mainly shoujo animes. We had a lot of shoujo animes. The most famous ones are, apart from Rossana, Sailor Moon, Hime-chan, no Ribbon, and so on and so on. Just two animes, but I think that is still a good point. Anyway, it was the main interest in people at that time to watch animes in the afternoon, and probably Rossana entered in their hearts because of the story, even if it was a bit strange because we had a lot of censorship, cutted episodes, and so on. But probably the best things are the best thing is probably the story, the relationship between Sana and Akito, and also a lot of other things like the positive but also a bit serious aura and atmosphere you can find in the anime. But also, for example, the fact that nowadays a lot of TV channels like to milk literally the programs with merchandising of literally everything. Notebooks, diaries, and so on and so on. It's crazy if you think about it, but is that? And Rossana was one of the victims. In fact, on the internet, you can find a lot of old merchandising nowadays. There are some Instagram accounts that also show them. But probably, yeah, one of the things that probably made Rossana became so popular was the story. Even with the censorship and the cuts, it was still great, and we loved it a lot. In the same way, we still love it even after 23 years.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I definitely feel like the story of Kodocha / Rossana, it's just a very universal story, and I feel like it touches so many people in so many different ways, and I feel like you can get so much out of its story. And yeah, it's just a very beautiful, like, the relationship between Sana and Akito is just absolutely beautiful in my opinion. And I think there's a lot we can learn with both those characters, like in how they develop. And I feel like through Sana, I've actually learned a lot, like, through both of them, but mainly through Sana's experience. Like when I do my video deep dives about their relationship, and I talked about this in a blog post I made on Tumblr, learning about how they process things and how they learn about love throughout the series has kind of helped me look inward and think about how I process love. And it's been really good for not just my marriage, but my friendships as well. So you mentioned censorship in Rossana. So that actually brings me into the next question. What are some of the most notable censorship in Rossana compared to the original Japanese version?
Well, a lot. If I have to give a tip to everyone who wants to read to see the anime, to have the best experience with Rossana, Kodocha in general, you can first read the manga and then the anime, because the manga is much better. Because yes, here in Italy, we have never been that lucky with censorship and cuts, and still nowadays is quite a serious theme. Unfortunately for us, Rossana wasn't the first victim. It wasn't that bad also, the censorship, because there are some animes that received a worse treatment. If I make an example, is Marmalade Boy, which had more than 70 episodes in the Japanese dub, the original version, but here in Italy, we received only 52. So you can just imagine that the treatment was really bad. cutting that many episodes, and it was going to be only the only cut they did, of course. But talking about Rossana, the main topic, well, we had a lot of changes, which was much more in details, like, for example, names of the characters. If I have to make a list, I remember almost everyone now. Sana Kurata became Rossana, which is quite funny also because the Japanese name is Sana and the Italian one is Rossana. So they did literally a strange. They literally played with words, and it is the funniest one. Then there's Akito Oyama, who became Eric. Then Misaki Kurata, who became Catherine Smith. Yeah, she also had changed the surname. It was Smith, Rossana Smith. Then there's Rei Sagami, who became Robbie. Then Naozumi Kamura, who became Charles Lones. Fuke Matsui, who became Fanny. Tsuyoshi Oki Sasaki, who became Terence, and so on, and a lot of other ones who changed. The only ones that didn't change were Shota Nakao, who kept his original name, and the two idols in episode 52, and one of the later ones, I think it was 81. Anyway, the two idols, Mayu Tubita and Tomomi Ayano Marukoji, changed their name. Mayu became Marilla, and Tomomi became Tamara. That's it.
Yeah. I kind of memorized some of those names when I was going through those sites that you gave me. Like I kind of had to learn, so I knew who they were talking about. And I remember thinking that Gerald was the funniest one for some reason. It just stuck with me.
I don't know why.
The name changes are really interesting. Do you have any other ones to add?
Well, if I have to add another one, Shinichi Gomi became only George. Then Kizu Kamayai became Margaret. Aya Sujita became Alisa, and I can't remember any more names.
Yeah, that's really interesting how the names get changed sometimes when an anime comes overseas. And like, I feel like now, when you're a kid, you don't really obviously know that it's been changed. But then I feel like as an adult, I feel like most anime fans look back on that and they cringe a little bit. I don't know about you guys, but I do.
It's a question. It's a strange question, but yeah. We received a lot of name changes. We still don't know why. Also, but maybe it's more simple because simply maybe the main people who watched the show, which were small kids, boys and girls, young people like me, maybe didn't remember the names, so they tried to change them into Japanese, into Italian ones, to make them easier to remember. I think that is fair. Yeah.
But yes, I do think it's funny that they'll change. I feel like it's obviously a less common practice now, and I think some of that's just because at least in the US, anime has not been presented like as a for kids thing the way that it used to be. But I mean, I always liked the ones that were kind of a clever version of the Japanese name. Like I guess like Rossana for Sana, that's great. I like when they try to keep it kind of at least somewhat similar. And then you'd get ones like totally out of left field. But you know what I mean. I just think it's very fun and clever when they try to get them kind of close. But my preference, of course, would be that they not change them at all. But
sometimes, well, it's good that they at least try to keep the first letter on. It's already a good thing to remember the name, also the original names. But yeah, that's it. They decided to do like that, and then nothing else can be done. The other way, they decided to keep the original names. But I will talk about the manga then. After talking about some changes, yeah, there is a lot of censorship then. If I have to say some of the most famous ones. For example, the part where Akito asked Sana to, I don't know if I can say that word, but that part.
Unaliving. That's what they say on YouTube all the time. Unaliving him. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I'm referring to the scene where Akito wants Sana to kill him. Simply that. Way, yeah, it really got cutted out, but in the worst way possible, because the scene where he asked her to kill him, yeah, I can say that, it got cut out, and the entire part was replaced, but the cut was really bad because we had a frame where you can still see the knife on the back. So, well, 10 over 10 quality, I have to say. It's only one of the various parts that got changed. The famous part which got changed is the final episode. Well, it's much more the final part when you can see Sana in the final part, yeah. Much more, yeah. The final part was also cut out when she waves at us, and yeah, literally the last part of the anime, it completely cut out. So the anime literally ended with the kiss between Sana and Akito on the tower, and nothing else. Yeah, really sad. And there are some websites like one of the ones that Kodocha Girl showed in one of the early episodes when you can find, for example, the entire story of this silly censor on the last part in the last episode. But yeah, that's it. Then some other cuts are, for example, when they tried to drown Mamizuki into the lake in one of the first episodes, when the bullies tried to drown her into a lake. Well, it was another part which got cut out. But in the manga, for example, you can still see it. And these are some examples. If I had to add another small change that I remember now is about Fuka's funny way of speaking, because as a lot of people know, in the original anime, she speaks with a slightly different accent compared to the other ones. And what they did in the Italian dub is to keep this difference in accent in speaking with the other characters. They decided to keep it, but they made her more English-like. A strange way of speaking English is use here in Italian. A really pronunciated American accent.
That is fascinating. I actually love that choice.
Yeah. No, I was talking. Yeah, yes, it was quite fun to deciding to keep that funny feature in the episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting change. In fact, I think that might be the most interesting change that you've shared with me today. But is there any other weird or interesting examples of censorship that you can think of in Rossana?
Well, these are the most important ones. Then there are some minor ones, works that were about bad cutted episodes when you can see other scenes in place of other ones, because a lot of people were complaining. It's something I seen on a world forum which still exists now. It's called manga.it, and there were a lot of people complaining about the fact that on the first airing, a lot of the episodes were bad cutted, and also some other things. For example, the episode was much longer or much shorter, and as you know, a lot of people liked to record them with VHS CDs, much more VHS in those years. And one of the things that a lot of people complained about is that some episodes remained cut out, literally, because setting up the recordings in those years was quite hard. And it's something that I literally learned about in these last years. Fun fact, I still have a VCR in my home, but it's broken. I then don't know what to do because I want to recover it. It has 30 years anyway. Yeah, it's 30 years old, but I want to make it work again because I'm really passionate about all the tech in general.
Yeah, me too. I still have a VCR that I still use for certain things. I have some taped episodes of Digimon from 2000 and 2001. But you're right, it was hard to get the recording set up to go at the right time. So a lot of what I have taped, there's maybe 5 minutes of the episode or whatever was airing before Digimon, or like 5 minutes after the episode would have aired. My parents would set it up for me, and they would set it to typically record for about an hour. That way, hopefully, I would get the whole episode. So I've got a lot of weird tapes.
Yeah, that's one interesting thing I've noticed, like of the rips that you see like on YouTube or Internet Archive, is like there's always like there always seems to be like the last 5 minutes of another show before it goes into what the actual show is that they're posting about, which I think is funny. But I didn't know that because we didn't really record on VHS when I was growing up. I know my mom would do it, but I never saw her do it, and she never taught me how. And she didn't do it very frequently because we just couldn't afford getting the blank tapes. But I remember she would record episodes of Naruto for me. That's about it. I do remember she recorded some Pokemon episodes as well. But those tapes they are long gone.
Yeah. Well, that was something too, is you could re-record over tapes. And so like I definitely have some where whatever had been taped previously onto it will sneak through, if that makes sense, because there's 2 layers of something being recorded. So you'll be watching a Digimon episode, and then for about a minute it's an episode of The West Wing, and then it goes back to Digimon. And that was also just something that happened. But I digress. I apologize, Matteo. Continue with what you were talking about.
Yeah, because I really like these themes about retro tech. Also because in my house I still have a lot of old tech that one of my future projects is also archiving all of this, because I think that something I have here will be rare for the future. A lot of people, I think, that will be happy to have some of this rare content on the internet. And literally, one of the things I'm doing, for example, with the old Kodocha websites, but much more the files I find on them, I always download everything and keep them on my PC, of course. In these moments, I'm doing this preservation work. In fact, I'm on my web archive profile. I have some saved content. For example, there is a clock widget, which Kodocha fans probably know about. Babbit clock, literally. I really like all the tech. Needs to be preserved, as I also said before. Anyway, yes, it was cutted a lot, Rossana, and really badly also.
So let's talk about the differences between the Italian version of the manga and the Japanese or the English. So what are some of the changes there, or if there are any?
Well, I have to be I'm really happy in announcing this, but nowadays I still have all the mangas, But one of the most positive things is that the Italian edition of the manga is perfect, is 100% authentic, like the Japanese one. To announce that there aren't changes, nothing. The only thing is that there are 2 pages more of the infos and nothing else, But the stories, it is 100% authentic to the Japanese one, so that's a good thing. And probably what it made me appreciate it even more, the manga, and in the stores I'm talking about dynamic manga, which still exists today. It's a positive thing, I think.
That's really awesome.
Yeah, I'm jealous because I'm sure you've heard us complain about some of the less than stellar choices in the English version of the manga, and I spend my days hoping and wishing for a new translation and a reprint, which does sort of lead me to a follow-up question, which is can you still go to a bookstore and get a copy of the manga in Italy, or is it out of print like it is here?
Well, you have to be a bit lucky, because on Dynit's web store, for example, the original manga, or better, the last reprint, the regular numbers aren't on sale. You can find them. Only the special volume, Mizuno Yakata, you can find. It's the only one you can find on the web store. But if you have to go in a bookstore, comic store, or those other shops, you have to be a bit lucky. In the shop I always go to, I can't find Kodocha, but I can find, for example, some numbers of other Miho Obana's mangas. For example, I found some Honey Beaters volumes, some Andantes and partner volumes, and so on and so on. So a bit lucky, but
indeed. I mean, they didn't print any of her other works in the United States, so that is
I am insanely
very cool
jealous right now.
Yeah. If only we could read Italian.
Yes, maybe one day after some lessons on Babbel or Duolingo.
Yeah, one Kodocha isn't the only work from Miho Obana we received here in Italy. Yeah, we have been pretty lucky. We received Kodocha, Andante, Partner, Honey Bitter, and the three those 3 stories, the early stories of Miho Obana, I think, like the Cat's Island, the one that got released also on Reborn magazine on the last week, I think. Yeah, there are 3 volumes, 3 books with some of early Miho Obana stories. That's pretty cool. The one we had is also the Clear, the one-off volume with Honey Bitter and Kodocha that merge into only one volume. So yeah, we've been pretty lucky here in Italy.
So other than Kodocha, have you read any of her other series? And if so, which one's your favorite other than Kodocha?
Well, I have Kodocha, Andante, and Partner for now. Andante and Partner, I bought them 2 years ago, October, I think. And I like them both. Much more Partner, because I liked the dark atmosphere that wasn't 100% reality, but it also had that small part of sci-fi that I like to find in a manga. I liked a lot Partner, much more than Andante. That was a bit plain, but it was still great, honestly. I'm a huge Miho Obana fan, so I really appreciate all of her works, but yeah, if I have to make a podium, first place Kodocha, second one Partner, third one Andante. I still have to read Honey Bitter. I read only some anticipations and some small parts of it. It seemed pretty cool.
That's awesome.
But I like those three. Yeah.
So I think you might have said this before, but this was actually the next question on our list today. Em, did you want to ask the question?
Absolutely. Which is, do you prefer Rossana or do you prefer the original Japanese version of the anime?
Well, I watched the episodes, well, of course, the Italian ones, I watched them all, and of course, it's been my first anime too, I have to admit that. It's been my first anime ever I ever watched, so I'm really passionate, and I have a lot of affection for it, so yeah, I am really passionate about our Italian dub. But honestly, the Japanese one, for some characters, it was slightly bad, honestly. For example, as I said before, if I have to choose between Fuka Matsui's original strange accent and the one we received here, I have to choose the Japanese one because it feels more authentic, of course, if you listen to it. But anyway, if I have to say which one I prefer the Italian one because I'm much more passionate about it. Funny thing, some characters also changed their dubber during the series. Wrong. Akito Hayama changed the dubber from episode 52 and onwards. It's an interesting thing, but yeah. They probably made it to have a much more mature voice, because they passed from elementary school to middle school. So, they wanted to add a different voice.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of cool, actually. I was thinking about from episode 52, I think it works, but it could have been really cool if they changed his voice actor just for when Sana gets back from filming Mizu no Yakuta, since he's grown at the same time. That's just a creative thought. It doesn't matter. And of course, none of those episodes were dubbed in the States, but I wonder if they would have done something similar or tried to do something similar. Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Joel's voice was already so deep to begin with.
I know. Bless him. That's very true.
Yeah. I have to say a thing about the American dub. I like Laura Bailey's voice. For Sana is a good choice. Yeah, I think there's no doubt.
Oh, for sure. All right, that brings us to our final question. Yeah, just for fun. Ari, take it away.
Sure. So, the most important question of the hour: who is your favorite Kodocha character?
Well, is the last one and also the most difficult because when I watch an anime I like and there are characters I really feel on my side. I mean, characters I like in the beginning and in the end of the anime. Well, it becomes really hard to choose, honestly. When I became a bit more mature, 2 years ago, I tried to watch and find much more in the characters than as the simple always the type of voice she has, the story and so on. I tried to put the consideration much more on a psychological side. And some chapters made me a bit sad for a question because in real life, and now it gets a bit emotional, and I know some people who had some similar experiences, for example, bad parents, like Tsuyoshi or Naotomi's stories. Yeah, it made me feel a bit sad, but at the same time, it made me look at reality with another eye, if I have to talk about it. But yeah, probably my favorite Kodocha character is Akito Ayama. It's a character I like, of course, in the first episodes. You don't like him because it's a bully. It is slowly ruining Sana's life in the first episodes. Well, it is a negative chapter. But then I noticed, of course, like everyone probably has done, that there is much more, as we know, behind Akito's chapter. A story of an hard childhood and a lot of tensions in the family, and it made him an sad, always angry, and a bit unstable person, as we know. And it made me reflect, because every day, how many persons there are in the world who are having similar situations like Akito's one. It made me reflect a lot, and this, and probably also its chapter development, its relationship with Sana, and also his chapter, his mood in the general anime, but overall the manga. It's probably what made me appreciate Akito even more. He's a person that you can find everywhere, because this type of situations are not good, and not everyone should have a good family, should have good parents and a good life. And yeah, Akito made me reflect a lot on that, and it's probably why it's probably the character I appreciate more in the anime, but of course on the manga.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he definitely makes you, I guess, empathize more, makes you understand, those people in real life who maybe are not the nicest people. And then it really makes you understand that maybe we don't see, the entire picture at first. And it really does. It says a lot. The character of Akito, I feel like really speaks volumes for those troubled people in life. And I definitely agree. No one should ever have to deal with what he deals with. And Akito is a very lucky character. When I first saw the series, I was like thinking it was going to get really dark, actually, because it really caught me off guard, like the whole situation in those first few episodes. And I thought that, something really, really traumatic was going to happen. And, Akito's a very lucky character. He had Sana to help him realize, what he was doing and how it was affecting others negatively. And also just her intervention with the family. And, some people aren't as lucky to have either that intervention or, that moment of clarity, like, oh, maybe this isn't the right way of living, or, treating other people because I'm sad or I'm angry. And yeah, I just think that, and I know we've talked about this in a podcast previously, but, I just feel like just the writing of Kodocha really speaks to those deep truths that we, sometimes don't always think about. And it's really important to think about, where somebody comes from and how it's affecting them, because it's easier to, I guess, understand a person or get closer to a person if we can think about the big picture like that.
Absolutely. And I love Akito too, because he's such a good example of growth, like where he begins in season 1, episode 1, and where he ends at the end of the series, I think really just indicates, how you can change and overcome terrible odds. So great choice, Matteo.
It is chef's kiss character development.
Mm-hmm.
Matteo, did you have anything else that you wanted to add in the episode today?
Well, I think that we have to say everything. Yeah, I think I have probably to give a tip for everyone who doesn't want to watch Kodocha. Maybe because it says that it's only for girls. Those stereotypes. But honestly, I think that everyone, especially people of my age, should have to watch, or better, much better, read, because the manga is much better for me. Have to read at least once in their lives Kodocha, because honestly, it opens another world for the mind. It makes you reflect on serious themes, and I think that, considering that the fact that these serious themes are something that you may not know in this moment, we could have similar situations like the ones in Kodocha, I think that it makes a good example of the reality that some people have to pass through every day. Honestly, I have to give a tip to everyone who hears this podcast. Watch Kodocha at least once in your life because it will open your mind. Literally, it made me change my character a bit. I really recognized this change, especially in these last 2 years, because I watched Kodocha the first time back in when I was 4 years old, the second time 4 years after, and then I watched it again some other times, especially when I discovered the streaming websites. But after the pandemic, when I discovered that on my pay TV, on Italia Uno, on those media channels, decided to air Rossana again. I decided to watch it again to give it a one other shot, as people would say. And well, it made me remember that the manga was a serious, much serious. It was probably what also made me subscribe, enter in the server, and restart with my searches on Kodocha after all those years. One of the websites that, for example, got shown on the deep dive of Kodocha websites were websites that I visited when I was 8 years old. So I think in my head, well, I discovered Kodocha again. Time to rediscover it again after all those years, and it probably brought to this day what I'm doing now, searching, and searching again to make for keeping everything about Kodocha into the internet, but also trying to find better people that of my age that could watch Kodocha for the first time, because as I said before, for me Kodocha is an experience, and in the last 2 years, last 3 years, it changed me and my chapter. I feel a much mature person, and that's all. That's all I had to say about Kodocha. I only want to give Miho Obana a hug someday. I will not meet her because not only with Kodocha but also the other two ones, and I hope also with the other ones I will read maybe Pony Bitter, Deep Clear, and the other stories. I only want to meet her because it changed a bit of my life, if I have to be honest. And that's all.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I completely feel the same way. And it's weird how like this 102 episode anime just really changed my life too. Like, because I'm totally with you there. Like, after I watched Kodocha and really absorbed what it was, like I felt like I became a much happier person. So I definitely understand where you're coming from there. But thank you so much for coming on 19 O'Clock News today. I had a lot of fun hearing about Rossana and what the anime looks like from the perspective of an Italian fan. And like I said, you've been a big help to the growth of the channel. So I was really excited to have you on today. So just thank you for all of your contributions to the Kodocha community, because it's been wonderful. I feel like the community's just really been popping the last couple of years.
I agree. And I also want to add my thanks. Matteo, you've been a wonderful friend and cheerleader, and it's been so great getting to know you through Kodocha. And I don't know what it is about the air today, but like listening to you guys talk about how much Kodocha means to you emotionally, and I just sort of, I'm crying right now. It just reminded me I'm here right now, and that I get to talk about this show and this series that I love so much with you guys. And it just sort of hit me
Oh
you
my
know,
gosh. Okay, so
being
you're
alone
making
for
me
so
cry.
long. I know, I'm sorry. Being
Oh
alone for so long
goodness.
in this fandom and loving it so much and having nobody to talk about. And now I have friends all over the world that
And
I
I
get
can't
to
even
talk to about
imagine.
this.
I can't even imagine being, alone in this fandom for that long. Because, like I said, I watched it for the first time 6 years ago, and I felt pretty alone. But my time alone as a fan wasn't that long as yours. So, like, just thank you for being so dedicated to this for so long. Because, like, I couldn't do it.
Oh, sorry. I don't know where that came from. But thank you so much for joining us, Matteo. You're a wonderful person, and I'm glad to know you.
Thanks you. Thanks a lot. And I'm also happy of talking with you too, and also with all of the other fans of Kodocha, because honestly, it's a gem that doesn't deserve to be forgot for me, and that's all.
Thank you.
I agree. Thank you. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
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 Thank you for listening to 19 O'Clock News, a Kodocha podcast.
19 O'Clock News is hosted by That Kodocha Girl and Mahou Shoujo M.
We love making new friends. Feel free to join us in the Kodocha Discord under Kodocha_media.
19 O'Clock News is not affiliated with any current or previous rights holders to Kodomo no Omocha by Miho Obana.